Hey, what is going on everyone? Super excited to be bringing you this video. This one is going to be a full step-by-step course, a full step-by-step training on exactly how I went from working as a warehouse associate to transitioning into an $80,000 software engineering job in under 6 months of learning, and how I've been able to help dozens of my students make that same transition and land 80 to 100K remote developer roles. This video is going to be very raw, unfiltered, no BS, just deep, step-by-step actionable advice on how anyone else can make that same transition. So please, out of respect for me, when you're watching this course, make sure to turn off your phone, close all your other tabs, and really just hone in and focus on this video alone, because you do not understand how much time, effort, and hardship it took for me to learn all of this information and then turn it into a course for you. So without further ado, I have all of the slides on my laptop here ready to go. So we will jump over to the screen and start the full course. All right, guys, how I transitioned from working as a warehouse associate to landing an $80,000 software engineering job in under 6 months of learning without any prior tech experience, without having a college degree, and without wasting years of my life. So if you don't already know who I am, my name is Ayman, and in this free training, I'm going to show you how I transitioned from working a blue collar job, lifting pallets and heavy boxes all day, into an $80,000 software engineering job that allowed me to multiply my income whilst only really working 3 to 4 hours a day, all in under 24 weeks. Now, for anyone who's watching this, please just close all your tabs, put your phone away, pay very close attention, because if you plan on making a life-changing income by learning how to code and transitioning into a tech job, and you follow the formula that I'm about to share with you in this video to a T, you'll be able to create similar results for yourself in a very short period of time. Now, before we get into the details of this video, I want to quickly show you proof of the statement above. So this image right here is the email of me receiving the hiring contract from my first company, my first job. Now, obviously, I can't show you guys the full email. There's a lot of personal information on this, which is why I actually have my next piece of proof here. So this image above actually shows all of the tasks and tickets that I worked on during my time as a developer in my first job. And of course, since this is an image, this could easily be fake. There's no way for you to know it's legitimate. So I'm actually going to open up my email now and show you each of these individual tickets. So what you're looking at right now is all of the tasks and tickets that I worked on during my time as a developer in the first company that I worked at. And all of this is on a project management platform called Jira that you would only ever know about if you've worked as a software engineer at a real company. And as you can see, I have tasks and tickets dating back to 2023, hundreds and hundreds of tasks that I worked on. You can see these here. You can see me getting assigned these tasks. If I refresh, you can see that this is completely legit, no cuts, nothing like that. And again, I have hundreds of these tasks that I worked on over the years that I worked in my first job. And if that's still not enough, these images right here show just a few instances of recruiters reaching out to me for 6-figure software engineering jobs across my entire career. So if we click into this image here, you can see that this is one of the roles that I was recruited for that had a salary of around 160K per year. Okay, now that we have that out of the way, let's dive into who this training is actually for. So if you're looking to transition out of your current career into a 60 to 100K tech job in the next 3 to 6 months, this is for you. If you're an experienced self-taught developer or bootcamp graduate who is still struggling to break into tech, this is for you. And if you know you have the potential to be doing so much more, but you're held back by your current job or life situation, this is for you. But now, who's this training not for? Well, if you're just looking for a quick side hustle and don't want to start a real career as a software engineer, then this training is not for you. If you are not coachable and ready for nuanced, in-depth training, this is not for you. And if you're not motivated and willing to put in a considerable amount of effort and focus into learning to code and breaking into tech, then this is not for you. Now, here is the truth about landing a job in tech that no one else is going to tell you. You can absolutely replace your income with a remote developer position, making $100,000 per year, working 3 to 4 hours a day, without a college degree, any previous coding experience, or wasting years of your life. However, most aren't capable of doing it because they don't fundamentally understand that, one, most people who are learning how to code have no idea what they are doing and are running around like headless chickens. And in order to succeed, you need to come in with a legitimate roadmap / game plan around what to learn and how to learn it. And two, no matter how good of a developer you are, you'll never land a job if you don't understand the current job market and how to leverage it to your advantage. Nor do they understand how easy it is to learn to code and actually get a job when you come in with a proper game plan and you leverage the right strategies. But if you're watching this, you're already on the right track to stopping yourself from making simple, avoidable mistakes. Now, a quick limiting belief you need to protect yourself from. Guys, there's no such thing as the job market is too saturated, or the tech industry is dying, or AI is replacing software engineers. We live in a digital age where every company is evolving into a software company. And because of that, there will always be hundreds of thousands of businesses who are in desperate need of quality, keyword quality developers to build their software. As you can see on LinkedIn alone, there's over 40,000 results for React developer jobs alone. And that's just React. And you can have a look at these salaries: 110 to 140, 210, 125. And we also have CEOs of massive tech companies coming forward and saying that despite AI gains and despite what everyone's saying about AI replacing developers, the demand for software developers still outweighs the supply. Now, if you want to be one of the developers earning those six-figure salaries that you just saw, in this breakdown, we're going to go over exactly one, how to navigate around all of the issues that I just talked about. Two, how I managed to land a software engineering job with no experience that offered me a high enough salary to justify comfortably transitioning careers. Three, how to actually land a 60 to 100K a year coding job in under 6 months. And four, how to do all of this without any college degree, any previous coding experience, or wasting years of your life. But before we get into that, I want to start by telling you guys my story. So I started off in a similar situation to you. I spent the majority of 2021 and 2022 working a blue collar job in a warehouse, lifting boxes and pallets all day. The pay wasn't horrible. It was okay. I was earning around $20-ish per hour, and on full-time hours, I was earning about $40,000 to $50,000 per year. So I was doing okay for myself, but the work was just boring and repetitive. Day after day, I was lifting boxes, scanning pallets, and just doing the same thing over and over again. And it wasn't until I started getting more and more back pain in my sciatica. So for those of you who don't know, that's back pain in your deep lower back. And it wasn't until I started getting some of that pain that I started to question the longevity of my career. Was I just going to keep doing this forever? If I'm already getting pain now, was I just going to keep lifting boxes until I was 65 or until my body gives out? What was actually my long-term plan? And everyone has their own individual wake-up call, but that was personally mine that sort of made me realize that I need to look for something different. So I started searching. I looked up high-paying careers on Google. I came across stuff like day trading, cryptocurrencies, and try to make use of some of the money that I'd saved up working for years to get into this stuff. But none of them worked for me, and if I'm being honest, most of them just felt like scams. You see, I wasn't looking for some crazy side hustle. I didn't want to be some Lamborghini crypto millionaire. I just wanted a legit, stable, predictable career that would give me financial, location, and time freedom. A sustainable career that would allow me to earn 6 figures a year while actually enjoying my life. You know, something you can tell to your friends and have a little bit of prestige. But I felt like I couldn't find that anywhere until I came across coding in July of 2022. So this was right around the time when the trend of learning to code and switching careers into tech had already taken off massively. So I was already kind of late to the party. I was scrolling through TikTok and I saw a video of someone making $160,000 per year as a self-taught software engineer with no degree or previous coding experience. And what really hit me is they went from working a blue-collar job, just like myself, to earning $160,000 per year as a software engineer in just the span of 12 months. And this caught my research, so I decided to do more research, and I found so many more stories just like this. I mean, you can just have a look at the side here. This person went from beginner to software engineer in 4 months, no CS degree. This guy became a web developer in 3 months. He learned to code and landed multiple offers in 3 months. And I'm sure if you're watching this video, you've seen dozens of these stories. So after some more digging, I realized that I came across the biggest gold mine of the decade. Every company is turning into a software company. More and more software products are being built from scratch. Old software needs to be improved, maintained, and fixed. And I realized the demand for good software developers is higher than ever, and it's still rapidly increasing. And the statistics reflect that. The average salary for a front-end developer is $120,000 per year. The US Bureau Labor of Statistics predicts a 26% increase in employment for software developers over the next 10 years. And just to put into context how crazy that is, the average growth for any other career is, I believe, around 5 to 8%. And software development is expected to have a 26% increase. And yes, that is even during the AI boom. The software development market is projected to grow by $1 trillion by 2033. So towards the middle of 2022, I decided that I was going to go all in on this opportunity. I was super motivated and pumped to start just like anyone else. But I quickly realized that all of the free information online was pretty vague and pretty confusing. And that sort of snapped me out of my fairy tale honeymoon phase that I was in. And I realized that even though I knew this tech thing was something that I should pursue, I pretty much just had no clear roadmap, direction, or guidance on what I actually have to learn or do to transition into the tech industry. So I ended up buying a bunch of courses on Udemy and all of these other platforms, and most of them were honestly a complete waste of time and money. I mean, they taught me way too much theory, they weren't practical enough at all, and also taught a bunch of useless information that honestly, as a software developer who's been working in the industry for years now, I still haven't used to this day. So at this point, I was a couple months into my journey and I had made little progress. Now combine this with all of the bad things that started popping up online around this time, like how the tech job market was going bad. It was around this time that the massive tech layoffs started to happen and ChatGPT just came out. Everyone was saying AI was taking over and that it's impossible to land a job without a degree now, that I missed the gold rush, that it's too late now. And all of that stuff just made it very, very hard for me to stay motivated. I wasn't keeping myself accountable anymore and I was coding on and off inconsistently. And the thing that made this so much worse is I knew that this could genuinely work. I knew that this was the opportunity for me, but I just didn't know what to do. And all of the conflicting information online I was seeing and the uncertainty of not knowing what to do next was killing me. This influencer would tell you to do this, and then the next influencer would tell you to do that. So eventually it was all just too much for me, and I decided to take a step away from coding and call it quits. For 2 weeks, I was in a bit of a rut. I hated going back to work every day, not because the job was bad. It wasn't bad at all, but because I hated the feeling of knowing that I wanted more and knowing that this tech thing could genuinely work, but just not having the path to get there. Something inside told me to try again, and I honestly cannot put a finger on what it was. So I came back, and this time I decided to go all in. I spent hundreds of hours researching. I spent the money I had saved up on different programs, boot camps, and mentorships, just throwing spaghetti at the wall because I knew that this could work. I knew if other people could figure it out, then I could too. And I had put way too much time, effort, and money into this whole tech thing at this point. And through that process, I realized something big. Almost everyone online, and I mean everyone, was teaching people how to learn to code and get hired in a completely outdated way. And that was why most people were failing. Not because they weren't smart enough, not because they weren't cut out for this. No, they were simply just being taught the wrong way by the wrong people. So at this point, I decided to use my intuition and do the complete opposite of what everyone else was doing. And just 1 month after this point, I landed an offer for an $80,000 software engineering job. All because I realized that following the same outdated roadmap and strategy as everyone else, it's going to lead you nowhere, especially in this job market. I mean, I was a blue collar worker with no previous coding experience, no sort of coding degree. Yet I managed to transition into an $80,000 job in tech, all because I fundamentally understood through hundreds of hours of research what to learn, how to learn it, and how to correctly navigate the current job market and leverage it to my advantage in order to stand out from the crowd. Now, since landing my first job, I went on to interview at massive companies like Canva for 6-figure engineering jobs and received several 6-figure job opportunities all within a year of starting my tech career. And at this point, something happened that I never expected. After I started sharing my story online, I started to get people that figured out what I had done, contacting me and messaging me, asking for my help learning to code and transitioning into tech so that they could get similar results for themselves. So I decided to roll up my sleeves and build out a new system to solve all of the problems that people were asking me for help with. Now, two of the recurring themes that I saw with these struggling career switches was that, one, they lacked an efficient and structured roadmap/game plan of what they should be learning and how to learn it. And two, they also didn't understand the state of the current job market and how to correctly navigate it so that they can actually get hired as fast as possible. And given my experience and track record, having transitioned into an $80,000 software engineering job from a non-tech background, as well as spending over $10,000 on mentorships, courses/boot camps on this topic alone, I knew the exact steps needed to help these beginners learn to code, transition into tech, and start 6-figure careers as software engineers. Now, this new six-figure coder framework, as I like to call it, that I implemented for these career switchers and tech beginners worked so well that within months of creating it, I already had dozens of student success stories. Roberto went from working in a pharmacy to a 144K job in 6 months. Anthony went from working in customer service to landing a 65K remote job in 12 months, and is now currently interviewing for a 140K to 200K role. Salman went from a pharmacy assistant to an 80K job offer in 9 months. Leopold went from an investment banker to a 50-hour remote job in 3 weeks. Adonai went from a teacher to a 60K remote job in 4 months. Ronan went from working in customer service to a 70K job. Diego went from a waiter to a 30 an hour internship. Samir went from working in aged care to a 30 an hour internship. Seth landed his first internship, which converted into a 52K job offer in just 4 months. Timothy landed his first internship in just 12 months. Ivan went from working in customer service to his first job in 4 months, etc. I could keep on going for days with all these different results that I've gotten for my students. And I'm showing you all these results just to prove to you that this six-figure coder framework is my playbook. I've built it through my own trial and error of spending tens of thousands of dollars and hundreds, if not thousands of hours of testing different programs, methods, strategies. And now I've decided to break it all down for you. In the following steps, I'll outline the entire process A to Z of what I did to accomplish these results. And I want to put this out there so that you can use my playbook to learn to code, transition into tech, and land a 60 to 100K a year coding job in under 12 months. So here are the specific stages that I took all of my students through in order to get them hired. And if you follow these exact stepping stones, it's impossible for you not to have a wildly successful career in tech in 2026 and beyond. So stage one is learning the theory. That is split up into 2 subsections. The first is the foundation phase, and the second is the technical / coding roadmap. And then the second stage is getting hired. And that is also split up into 2 subsections. The first of which is building your application material. And the second phase of that is learning how to navigate the current tech job market. When you have a clear roadmap like this and you understand what you actually have to do and what your priorities are at each stage, learning to code and getting hired just becomes a matter of time, not a constant struggle to figure out what your next move should be. So without further ado, let's dive straight into the details of each stage, starting with step 1, learning the theory. So before jumping headfirst into any technical skills, it's extremely important that you start this journey with a solid foundation. And in my experience, how successful you are learning to code and landing a developer job is determined by 2 key pillars. The first is your mindset and your focus, and the second is your learning strategy. And if I move myself out the way, you can see we have a little diagram here. Success equal mindset and focus X learning strategy. So both are very, very crucial. Now, mindset and focus refers to how consistent you are with showing up every single day to do the work that is required, and how focused you are during the time that you are actually learning or coding. And your learning strategy refers to the way / method you're actually using to go about learning the different programming languages or technologies you have to learn. Now, I could give you all of the information in the world on how to learn to code and land a 6-figure software engineering job. You would still never succeed if you don't have these 2 down. So the first thing I do with all my students is teach them how to master these 2 pillars. So they're already in the top 1% of people learning how to code from the very beginning. Now let's start by going through mindset and focus. Now I know this might seem a bit woo-woo and focusing on mindset might not seem important, but it is extremely crucial to your success. Mastering this pillar is going to allow you to kill the competition, and the surprising thing is optimizing it is actually extremely simple. All you need to do is 1, increase your focus. So increase the amount of focus you have during the time you are learning to code / learning. 2, remove distractions. So remove all potential distractions that could hinder your focus while you're learning to code. And 3, locked routine. So have a non-negotiable routine around the amount of time that you code every single day. That is literally it. Now let's dive into the details of how we can actually optimize each step of this process. So improving focus. The first thing you want to do to improve your focus is meditate 10 to 20 minutes every morning. Now, I know again, this seems a bit woo-woo, a bit spiritual, but I promise you, we're not doing it for that reason. Meditating just trains your attention span and gets you used to focusing on one thing, i.e. your breath, for an extended period of time. That's exactly what you're going to be doing when you are learning to code. You're either going to be sitting down and focusing on a video for an extended period of time, or you're going to be sitting down and focusing on a project for an extended period of time. So anything we can do to improve that attention span, improve your ability to sit down and focus on one thing for a long period of time, is going to come in very, very handy in helping you learn to code. So start your day by meditating 10 to 20 minutes every morning. There's a really good app on the App Store for this that I like to use that is called Medito. It is completely free. You can just turn on a 10-20 minute timer, sit down, focus on your breath, and move on with your day. Now 2, exercise minimum 5 times a week. Now I'm not going to be the millionth person to explain to you why exercise is good. You already know that. But just make sure that you're exercising, breaking a sweat minimum 5 times a week. I don't care how you choose to do this, whether it's running, going to the gym, cycling. Just make sure you hit this minimum requirement. Number 3, stop doing drugs and alcohol. Now, again, I'm not going to be the millionth person to tell you why drugs and alcohol are bad. I'm not saying you need to completely stop these things if you don't want to. But what you need to keep in mind is when you are learning to code, your brain needs every little bit of power. And unfortunately, these things literally kill your brain cells. It obviously doesn't make you more efficient at learning to code. So if you can just stop these for the next 3 to 6 months while you focus on learning to code, I can guarantee you that you're going to get results a lot more quickly than if you were doing these things. Now again, you're an adult, it's your life, it's your choice, but this is just a recommendation. Now 4 is sleep 7 to 9 hours every single day. Again, I don't need to be the millionth person to tell you why sleep is good, but if you can sleep within 7 to 9 hours every single night, that's going to put you in a really good spot. You're going to feel sharp, you're going to feel energized, which is obviously the best possible state to be learning to code. Now removing distractions. So first things first, get off of social media. Now again, you're an adult, this is your choice, and this is strictly a recommendation, but it is a very, very, very strong recommendation at that. Social media is honestly the reason why I quit learning to code. There is so much BS on social media. Every single influencer is trying to fearmonger you and get views, telling you about the next thing that is going to kill software engineering careers, the next thing that's crashing the job market. There's a new AI tool popping up every single day that is replacing software engineers. This tech layoff is happening here. This tech layoff is happening there. And honestly, the moment I decided to get off of social media, not listen to what any tech influencer was saying, and stop listening to the negativity on social media about tech, is when I actually started getting the best results. So this is a strong recommendation. This journey is already difficult as it is, just trying to learn the technical skills, just trying to learn to code. Don't make your journey any harder than it has to be with all of the BS that is on social media about the tech industry. Now 2, no video games. Now again, you're an adult, this is your choice, but if you're watching this video, I'm assuming that you want to make a change in your career, and that's obviously going to require time. And I'm assuming a lot of you guys are working full-time, and if you're working full-time, it's going to be very difficult to manage learning to code, working full-time, playing video games, and playing a sport, and watching Netflix 2 hours a day. You're going to have to temporarily take away some of the activities that you may like to do in favor of learning to code, so that in the future, you'll have more time to do whatever the hell you want. Once you're earning 6 figures a year as a software engineer, and you just want to work 3 to 4 hours a day and go watch Netflix and play video games for the rest of the day, be my guest. Trust me, I know a ton of people who are doing exactly that, and they're enjoying life. But until you get there, I don't see any reason why you should be wasting your time playing video games or watching Netflix if you are actually serious about making this career, if you're actually serious about making this transition, that is. Now 3, phone off in a drawer, airplane mode on the other side of the house. Now, what I mean by this is, guys, coding is a mentally intensive activity. I'd say learning to code is honestly the most mentally intensive activity I have ever done. And I've done a lot. And being in a zoned in, focused state when you are learning to code is very, very important. So if you have your phone next to you, you're getting pop-ups from Instagram every 2 minutes. Your girlfriend's calling you every 30 minutes. Friends are calling you, telling you to come out. Your mom is calling you, and you're getting distracted every 10 minutes. It's going to be very, very difficult for you to make progress progress when you are learning to code. So just for the time where you are learning to code, that 1, 2, 3, 4 hour block, just turn your phone off, put it on airplane mode, put it on the other side of the house, and just focus on this one thing. And number 3 is locked in routine. So the first thing you want to make sure you're doing is sleeping and waking up at the same time every single day religiously. I know things aren't all sunshine and rainbows, I get it, but at least try and stick to a consistent sleep routine. If you're waking up at 10 a.m. one day, and then 4 a.m. one day, and then 12 p.m. the next day, your brain and your body is just going to be out of whack, which is not going to make it impossible to learn how to code, but it's just going to make it a lot more difficult. And it sort of just comes back to the concept of learning to code is already difficult. You don't want to make it any more difficult than it is. So this is definitely a big one to implement to just make your journey so much easier. Now, the next thing is every night you want to plan the next day in 30-minute intervals and stick to it. Now, the reason we do this is I want you to block out the time that you are going to code every single day the night before so that you can stick to it. If you don't do this and you just tell yourself, okay, tomorrow I'm going to code, you don't have a specific time, you don't tell yourself, okay, I'm going to do it at this time for this long, you're going to find that the day passes you by super quickly before you've even had the chance to code. When you're eating breakfast, you'll say you'll code after you eat lunch. After you eat lunch, you'll say, okay, I'll code after dinner. After dinner, you'll say, okay, I'll code after I relax for 30 minutes. And before you know it, it's time for bed and you haven't gotten a single minute of coding in. But if you plan the next day in 30-minute intervals, you put down exactly what time you're going to code and you just stick to it, it's going to hold you a lot more accountable, which is going to make it a lot easier for you to stay consistent. Now, the next thing you want to be doing is coding every single day. Guys, learning to code is like learning a language. What you'll notice is when you are speaking a language that you are trying to learn every single day. So let's say you're trying to learn Spanish and you move to Spain. You're going to learn Spanish super quickly because you're just exposed to it so often. You're using it every single day. Whereas if you were trying to take Spanish classes 3 times a week for an hour, you're going to learn Spanish a lot slower. The same thing applies with learning to code. If you learn to code every single day, you're going to learn to code so much more quickly because you don't give your brain any time to forget. Whereas if you're coding 2 times a week, by the time you get to the second session, you've already forgotten what you learned at the first. So this is a major point that you need to be implementing. Now, for minimum 15 hours a week of coding per week, you need to be coding minimum 15 hours per week, which comes out to just over 2 hours per day. No excuses. Everyone has at least 2 hours a day to learn to code. And even if it's not 2 hours a day, you can figure out how to get to 15 hours per week. Whether that means you code 30 minutes on the weekdays while you have work, and then you code 5 hours a day on the weekends when you don't have work, or any other sort of similar arrangement. There's no excuses when it comes to this. When there is a will, and if you really want to make this work, I guarantee you'll find the time to get to 15 hours a week. Whether that means sacrificing your video game session, or sacrificing that 2 hours of Netflix every night, or sacrificing that hour scrolling through the internet or scrolling through social media. If you really want to make this work, you'll find 15 hours a week. So as you can tell, improving your mindset and focus is very simple. It's very straightforward. A lot of this stuff you've probably heard before, but ask yourself, how many of these are you actually sticking to at the moment? And the chances are you aren't sticking to any of these. Or if you are, very few of these. And the good thing is that is also the case for the rest of your competition. So if you can just implement these simple things here, they're not that hard to implement. That is already going to put you in the top percentile of people learning how to code. And that should show you just how low the bar is and how full of shit everyone on social media is who says it's so hard to learn to code and it's so difficult, when 99% of people who are learning to code can't implement these basic, simple foundations. So that covers the first pillar of success, which is the mindset and focus. Now let's dive into the next pillar of success, which is your learning strategy. So here is how it's going to work. For every single programming language or technology in the coding roadmap, which I'll walk you through later in this video, you're going to use the following learning strategy. You'll start by watching a crash course, moving to 3 guided projects, and then finish with a solo project. And then once you've completed these 3 steps for a individual technology, you now know you're good enough to move on and repeat the process for the next technology. This is what I call the 3X framework. And it's an absolutely foolproof learning strategy that I crafted after spending hundreds of hours mashing together the best ideas from $10,000+ worth of boot camps, programs, and mentorships. And it's pretty much the most efficient way to learn any programming language or technology as fast as possible. Now, let's actually dive into the details of each stage of the 3X framework to show you how to actually optimize each step of the process. So, the first stage of the 3 3X framework is watching a crash course. And the purpose of this stage is to give you a broad understanding of all of the information you need to understand the programming language / technology that you are learning. Now, just to be clear, by the end of the crash course, you are by no means meant to have a deep understanding of how everything works. Just a basic surface level idea of how everything kind of works. Now, an example of how you would carry out this crash course stage is if you were learning, let's say, JavaScript, you'd go to YouTube, you'd search for JavaScript crash course, and you'd code along with any video of your choice. Now, in order to make sure that you are making the most of this stage, there's a few key guidelines that you need to make sure that you're following. And the first of which is taking notes. So while you're watching any crash course, it is very, very important that you are taking notes on all of the key concepts that you are learning. And this is going to be good for you not only because you can refer to these notes in the later stages of the learning strategy when you get stuck, but just the fact that you're even summarizing the concepts that you are learning in your own words is going to help you understand and internalize the information so much better and actually commit it to long-term memory. Now, the second guideline is coding along. So if it wasn't obvious enough while you're watching the crash course, you want to make sure that you're coding along when the instructor is coding. Coding along is going to allow you to get your hands dirty and make things stick so much better than just watching a tutorial. Now, the third guideline is do the exercises. So throughout any crash course, you're probably going to be given exercises that the instructor wants you to go out and do. And it's really important that you're actually taking the time to pause the video and give these exercises a shot, because these exercises are going to develop your critical thinking ability and actually get you comfortable writing code on your own. And the fourth guideline is rewinding the video when you get stuck. So whenever you're stuck on something or you're struggling to understand a concept in a crash course, don't feel afraid to just rewind the video and rewatch the explanation. Remember, the whole point of the crash course is not for you to just speed through the video as quickly as possible. It's for you to develop a basic understanding of how the technology or language that you are learning works. You shouldn't rush to get through the video as quickly as possible. So don't feel ashamed to move at your own pace. It's not a competition to rush through the video as quickly as possible. Rewind the video as many times as you need in order to understand the concepts. Now, following these guidelines, you should have a basic understanding of how everything works by the end of the crash course. So now it's time to learn how to use that knowledge practically. And how we do that is with the second stage of the 3X framework, which is coding along with 3 guided projects. So the purpose of this stage is to take all of the fundamental concepts that you learned during the crash course and teach you how to actually apply them practically in the real world by building projects. So the instructions for this stage are pretty simple. Just find 3 project walkthroughs online and code along with them. So for example, let's say you were learning JavaScript. So you'd go to YouTube, you'd search for something like JavaScript projects or JavaScript tutorial projects and code along with any 3 guided projects of your choice. Now, there is a phenomenon in the programming community known as tutorial hell, and it refers to when a person consumes countless project tutorials but is unable to build anything on their own. And in order to make sure that you don't go into tutorial hell and you actually make the most of this stage, it's very, very important that you implement these few key guidelines while you are going through the guided projects. And the first of which is going to be coding along. So if it wasn't obvious enough, you have to be coding along with the tutorial projects in this stage. This is even more important than it was during the crash course. And again, this is because coding along is going to allow you to internalize the information that you are learning so much better than just watching someone else do it. Now, the second guideline is building ahead. Once you gain a little bit of confidence, I recommend that you actually attempt to not just follow, but build ahead of the project tutorial that you are following. Now, in your first guided project, you probably won't be confident enough to pull this off, and that's okay. You're still trying to just get a hang of how everything works. But once you get to your second or third, you should be starting to feel a little more confident writing code on your own. And it's at this point that I want you to start pausing the video and coding ahead and referring back to the project tutorial whenever you get stuck, sort of just using it as training wheels. Now, the third guideline is adding your own twists. So if you're feeling extra confident, you can even add your own twists and changes to the guided projects. And this is going to help you really push your knowledge, really develop that critical thinking ability, and overall just make you so much more better at writing code on your own. Now, with the help of these strategies, at the end of the guided projects, you should be feeling a lot more confident about the language or technology that you are learning. Now it's time to put your knowledge to a final test with a solo project. project. So the final stage of the 3X framework is building a solo project on your own. So by this stage, you've learned all the fundamentals of the given language or technology through the crash course. And you learn how those fundamentals are used in the real world with the guided projects. Now, the final test to make sure you understand everything you just learned is to build a project on your own. So this stage is going to be pretty self-explanatory. You're going to throw yourself into the deep end and build out a project completely on your own without the help of a project tutorial. And this is going to let you know whether you actually understand the language or technology you are learning or you don't. Now, you're going to get your solo project idea from ChatGPT using the following prompt. I have just finished learning, insert whatever language or technology you are learning. Give me a solo project idea that would really test my real world knowledge and captures everything you'd use it for in a real front-end software engineering job. And if you can complete the project that ChatGPT spits out, congrats. You now know you have a solid understanding of whatever language or technology you are learning, and you can confidently move on to the next technology on the roadmap. So that's the basic rundown of how the learning strategy works. And like I said earlier on, you'll repeat this learning strategy for all of the technologies and languages in the coding roadmap, which I will walk you through later in the video. So your learning process is basically just going to look like crash course, guided projects, solo project, and then repeat that loop again and again for every language or technology that you have to learn. And on that note, now that we have the mindset and the focus down, we've got the learning strategy down, we have a solid foundation. Now it is time to dive into the second subsection of learning the theory, which is the actual coding/technical roadmap. So once you have a solid foundation, you are ready to dive into the technical roadmap. But what do you even learn? Well, what you need to understand as a beginner is there are so many different fields of software engineering that you could go into. There is front end, back end, AI/machine learning, DevOps, mobile applications, game development, etc. But the easiest field to break into as an absolute beginner with no experience is front end development, without a doubt. It's the easiest to learn. It's the most accessible field for beginners. There's the most resources out there for it. It's the lowest barrier to entry to getting hired. And that's why front-end development is known as the gateway drug of software development. But this doesn't mean you have to stick with it forever. Once you start with front-end development and you get industry experience as a front-end software engineer, you can then choose to pivot into any other field that you want much more easily now that you actually have your foot in the door. So now that you understand that front-end development is the easiest and best path into tech as a beginner, here is a step-by-step roadmap with all of the technical skills you need to learn in order to land a front-end software engineering job as fast as possible. And the first two skills you're going to be learning are going to be HTML and CSS. So if you don't already know what HTML and CSS are, HTML defines the structure and content of web pages. So think buttons, images, text, headings, paragraphs. And CSS is what we use to make that content look pretty. So we use CSS to customize the fonts, the colors, the heights, the widths, the spacing, the alignments. And it's very, very important that you learn these two at the same time because they are so reliant on each other. Now, like I mentioned earlier, you're going to be learning HTML and CSS using the 3X framework. So crash course, 3 guided projects, and then a solo project. But you want to make sure that you are finding HTML and CSS crash courses that cover all the key concepts. So for HTML, that's going to be basic tags, text formatting, list, links, images, forms, and semantic elements. And for CSS, that's going to be selectors, box model, positioning, display, flexbox, typography, colors, transitions and animations, and responsive design. Now, after you learn HTML and CSS, you're going to want to learn JavaScript. So JavaScript is what pays the bills. It's one of the most popular and in-demand programming languages in the world. But before moving forward, I want to make it very clear that learning JavaScript is going to be a lot more difficult than learning HTML and CSS, especially if you have no prior programming experience. A lot of people, they learn HTML and CSS, they think coding is super easy, and then bang, JavaScript hits them like a punch in the gut. But don't let this demotivate you. Just sort of trust the process, and the hit is going to hurt a lot less now that you can actually brace for it and you actually know it's going to happen. Just like bracing for a punch. A punch to the gut hurts a lot more when you haven't had the chance to brace or tense your abs. Now, just like HTML and CSS, you'll learn JavaScript using the 3X framework. And you want to make sure that you are finding JavaScript crash courses that cover all of the key concepts. So for JavaScript, that's going to be data types and variables, conditionals, loops, functions, arrays, objects, the DOM, asynchronous JavaScript, and working with APIs. Now, after JavaScript, you'll learn React. So React is basically just a library that makes JavaScript easier to use. It makes it more maintainable and also more scalable. And basically what it does is just put HTML, CSS, and JavaScript all together in one place and makes them easier to use together. Now, just like JavaScript, you'll learn React using the 3X framework, and you want to make sure you are finding crash courses that cover all the key concepts. So for React, that's going to be components, props, event handlers, React hooks, React routing, and also API integration. Now, a quick pro tip is you want to find guided projects that use Firebase, so that combine Firebase and React. And that's because Firebase is something that is very, very easy to learn on the fly, but will allow you to build so much more impressive projects with React. Now, after you learn React, we're going to take a bit of a detour and spend some time learning Git and GitHub. So Git and GitHub are tools that allow developers to collaborate on projects. And to learn Git and GitHub, what I do is I place my students in a remote internship program where they can learn to use these technologies in a real world work environment, whilst also getting experience on their resume. But a single crash course on YouTube, plus a little bit of practice on your own in your already existing projects, will probably be enough to wrap your head around these two technologies. So no need to do the whole 3X framework for Git and GitHub. They're very, very easy to learn. Very, very simple. So just a quick crash course and then use it in some of the projects that you've already built. So by this point, you now have a solid understanding of the fundamentals of front-end web development. So that is HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React, and Git and GitHub. Now it's time to become a standout developer by learning advanced modern technologies used by the top companies. And this includes the following technologies: Next.js, TypeScript, Redux, Stripe payment integration, Tailwind CSS, and AI integration. So integrating ChatGPT and Claude into your apps. Now, the best part about this is once you have a solid understanding of the fundamentals, these new technologies become super, super, super easy to learn. And because of that, my recommended approach for learning these technologies is very, very different. There's no need to do the whole 3X framework at this point. All you need to do is watch a crash course on each of these technologies and then just build a massive solo project combining all of these technologies. And that should be more than enough for you to build a solid understanding of them, whilst also building a really good project that you can put on your resume. All right, at this point, you have now learned all of the technical skills you need to know in order to be genuinely valuable to a company as a front-end developer. Now, at this stage, you want to start preparing for the front-end interview process before you go out and start applying. Now, this is going to involve learning and memorizing a bunch of useless information that you will pretty much never use on the job, but it's a necessary part of the process, and it's much better to do that now, just before you actually need it, rather than at the beginning of your journey where this stuff will just confuse you even more, which is the approach that most online courses take for some wild reason. But with that being said, the interview process for a front-end software engineering role typically consists of 3 stages. The first is going to be the phone interview. The second stage is going to be the coding interview. And then the third and final stage is typically going to be the behavioral interview. Now let's dive into the details of how we can actually prepare for each stage step by step, starting with the phone interview. So this first stage of the interview process, you will typically receive a call from a hiring manager or recruiter at the company that you're applying to, where they may, 1, gauge how motivated you are and may test your knowledge on the company itself and ask you why you want to work there. And 2, they may ask you a few trivia style questions about HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and React to test your web development fundamentals. Now, this is all to make sure that you are worth their time to push forward to the other stages of the interview process, the later stages, which will be conducted by their developers. If you absolutely flunk this stage, you are not going to be put forward to the next round of interviews, because their developers cost way too much money to waste time interviewing people who are not qualified and who are not interested. And for that reason, it's very important that you make sure you prepare for this first stage properly. It sets the foundation for everything else. So now the question is, how do you actually prepare for the phone interview? Well, the first thing you need to be doing is learning about the company. You see, companies will usually give you a heads up of when the phone interview is actually going to take place, whether that's via an email, a message, or something similar. And this gives you enough time to go on Google, go on the company's website, go on their LinkedIn, their social media pages, and research their mission, their products, their culture, and honestly just learn more about the company going into the interview. But if I'm being honest, I've had times where companies would hit me with an unexpected phone interview out of nowhere, giving me no time to prepare or do any research at all. So in that case, I recommend still just acting like you're really interested in the company and you really are motivated to work at that specific company, even if you have absolutely no knowledge about what their business is and how it works. Yes, you are kind of sucking up to the company, but this is the game that we are playing. Now, the next thing you want to do is practice for the trivia style questions. So you want to make sure that you're prepared for any potential trivia questions that they might throw at you. And in order to do this, just search for front-end interview trivia questions on Google, and there's honestly 1,000,001 resources for you to go through. And whatever resource you choose, the goal here is pretty much just to cram and memorize the answers to as much HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and React trivia questions as you can. Now, the next stage of the interview process is going to be the coding interview. So this next stage of the interview process is going to involve you taking part in one or more coding challenges to actually test your skills and better gauge where you are at in terms of your programming experience and expertise. Now, like I mentioned earlier, this stage of the interview process is going to be conducted by a developer at the company rather than a recruiter or a hiring manager. And depending on the kind of companies that you're applying to, the kind of interviews that you get at this stage are going to vary. And here's what I mean. If your coding interview is at a startup, at a small company, or even a mid-sized company, the interview process for these smaller, lesser known, more local companies tend to be the nicest ones. The coding interviews are rarely ever going to involve those complex algorithm, leak code type questions, but instead they're usually going to be more practical take-home challenges that are actually based on the kind of work that you will be doing day to day. For example, the coding interview for the first job that I landed was very, very simple. It was just building a small website that displayed results from an API. So they gave me an API, they told me, okay, make a website that fetches the data from this API and show it on the page. And if you didn't understand a word of what I just said, all you need to understand is that it was a very simple project that was actually related to the kind of work that I ended up doing day to day at that company. So for this reason, if you have a coding interview at these smaller, lesser known companies, what you need to realize is the interview process for these larger, more well-known companies like Apple or Google or Netflix or Meta tends to be a lot more rigorous. The interviews are going to involve a ton of complex algorithms, and if that wasn't enough, also practical coding challenges. The coding interviews are typically going to involve both algorithmic leak code style questions and practical coding challenges that are based on the kind of work you'll be doing day to day, taking place over multiple different rounds. So now the question is, how do you actually go about preparing? Well, my assumption is if you're watching this video, you are trying to land your first job in tech. And what you need to realize is the first job that you land is very, 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 very likely not going to be at a large Fortune 500 company because they look for people with just way more experience than you have currently. Instead, your first job is typically going to be at a smaller, lesser known company. And for this reason, I wouldn't recommend spending too much time focusing on algorithms or any of the complex leak code type questions, but just focus more on the practical aspects of coding and building projects to keep your skills fresh. Now, the third and final stage of the interview process is going to be the behavioral interview. So this final stage of the interview process is going to involve you having a conversation with a recruiter or hiring manager at the company about whether you're a good fit or not. And honestly, if you've made it to the behavioral, you're already past the hard part. In this stage, they're just looking for any major red flags that could potentially disqualify you from the role. So how do you go about preparing? Well, the first thing you want to do here is learn about the company. So just like the phone interview, you're usually going to have a heads up of when the behavioral interview is going to occur. And this gives you enough time to research the company's mission, products, culture, etc. before the interview. And in the interview, you want to then use that information that you learned to act very, very interested and motivated to work at this specific company, even if you have no interest in what they do at all. Again, if this seems like you're lying or sucking up to the company, it's not. It's just a game you have to play. Now, the next thing you want to do is go online and search for the most common behavioral interview questions. So this is going to be stuff like, like, why do you want to work here? Why front-end development? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? So on and so forth. And these questions are all very, very easy to answer, but it's always just best to make sure that you are prepared and have a few stories or answers sort of planned out in your head coming into the interview. Honestly, as far as the behavioral goes, just be yourself. Because at the end of the day, like I said, you're already past the hard part. They already think you're a skilled enough developer to actually bring value to their company. So just show them that you're really motivated, that you really enjoy programming and you want to turn this hobby into a career, etc. And with that, we have completed the first stage of learning the theory. And now what we're going to do is learn how to take that theory and use it to actually get hired and profit off of our skills. So by the end of the coding roadmap, you've now pretty much learned everything you need in order to ace the interview process and also genuinely bring value to a company as a front-end developer. Now it's actually time to learn how to profit from all of your hard-earned skills by getting hired and landing a job. Now, before we start applying to jobs, it's very, very important that we make sure that our application material is on point. So that includes your resume, your portfolio website, your LinkedIn, and your GitHub. So let's actually dive into the details of how we can optimize each of these one by one so that you can start applying to jobs and be a standout candidate for every single one that you apply to, starting with the resume. So the resume structure of a typical front-end developer resume is going to look something like this. You're going to have a header, an experience section, a project section, an education section, and a skills section. Now let's actually dive into the details of each section and show you how you can build out each of them one by one, starting with the header. So the header of your resume is very simple. All you have to do is make sure that you include your full name, your number, your email, your portfolio website link, and links to your LinkedIn and GitHub. Now you also need to make sure that your portfolio website link is a custom domain. For example, your first name, lastname.com. So my name is Ayman Musa. So I'd want the domain for my portfolio website to be aymanmusa.com. And your email must also be a custom domain. So for example, me@aymanmusa.com. This is just one of those small 1% things that recruiters are looking for that is going to make you absolutely stand out from every other candidate. It displays professionalism. It shows that you're extremely serious about this. And it's also extremely easy and cheap for you to set up your own custom domain for your portfolio website and email. Just go to Namecheap or GoDaddy for your custom domain and go to GoDaddy or Google Suite for your custom email. And there's literally 1,000,001 tutorials online that'll walk you through all of the details on how to set this up. It's very simple, very cheap, shouldn't be more than $20 to buy your own domain. Now, next is the experience section. Now, here is the truth about work experience that no one is going to tell you. You need work experience to get work experience. That's just the simple truth. And if you're applying for junior roles, you need at least 2 experiences on your resume for 6 months each. Trust me, I've done the research. And if you want to have decent success when you're applying to jobs, you need to meet this minimum standard. Now, with that being said, the question you're probably asking is, how the hell do I get experience on my resume if you need experience to get experience? It's like, how do I get a job if I need to have a job in the past to get a job? It's like a paradox. And this is the exact problem that me and all of my students faced. But here's exactly what you need to do in order to solve this problem. The first solution to this problem is the freelance front-end developer solution. So the first thing I have all of my students do is say they have 6 months of experience as a freelance front-end developer on their resume. And in order to not make this a complete lie, but just a slight exaggeration/stretch of the truth, I have all of my students take the following steps. Step 1, approach everyone you know. So approach absolutely everyone you know. So that's family, friends, mutuals, etc. And ask if they need a website, offering to build it for them 100% free. Now, at the same time, you want to use Google Docs to search for local brick and mortar businesses in your area that don't have a website, and you'll be able to see that. And you want to email and call these businesses making the same proposal. Using this method, I can guarantee you that you're going to find at least one person who needs a website. So once you do find someone who needs a website, all you need to do is find a web template on Envato Elements. So go to envatoelements.com or whatever the domain for it is. And let's say, for example, you're building a website for your friend who owns a barbershop. You would select the web templates option. You'd search for a barbershop template. And as you can see below here, there's going to be a ton of results that pop up. So at this point, you either have 2 options. You can either just take the website template and then customize it for your client's needs, or you can just use these web templates as inspiration for your design. I'd personally recommend the second option. Now, whatever approach you choose, once you finish getting the website built or customizing the web template, whatever you chose to do, you want to get the client to buy a custom domain and deploy the website for them. This is a very, very easy process, and once you know how to code, you'll be able to do this in like 5 minutes. And now step 4, just repeat this process for 2 to 3 more people, and now you are a legit freelance front-end developer. So now when someone digs deeper into this experience in an interview, you can actually back it up with real proof and real clients. And a quick pro tip, you always want to be exaggerating the hell out of your resume. You want to be stretching the truth as long as you can actually back it up with real proof in the interview. So if someone asks us about this freelancing experience, all we have to do is show them the real clients that we worked with, the real websites that we built, and that turns this into a completely legitimate experience. Now, the second strategy is creating your own agency. So the next thing I have all my students do is create their own web development agency and say they have 6 months of experience there as a front-end developer. So they're essentially saying they worked at this agency for 6 months. Now, again, in order to not make this a complete lie, but just an exaggeration / stretch of the truth, I have all of my students take the following steps. Step 1 is make the company / agency look absolutely legit. So in order for this strategy to work, your agency / company has to look very, very real and legitimate. This is not going to work if the company just doesn't seem legit. So you must, 1, find a digital agency web template on Envato Elements and copy the design and copy the code. Your website needs to have terms and conditions, privacy policies, cookie disclaimers, everything that a real business would have. You need to set up a LinkedIn page for the agency, social media pages for the agency, even set up a Google business profile for the agency. You want to make the company look so legit that when a recruiter searches it up on Google, bang, they get the website. Bang, they have the Google business profile on the right. Boom, second result is the LinkedIn. Boom, third result is the Instagram page. And once you've completed step 1, what you then want to do is use the same freelancing strategy to find clients. So you're going to do the same thing as before. You're going to approach everyone you know, family, friends, mutuals, etc., and ask if they need a website and offer to build it for them 100% free. And you'll do the same thing as before. You will search Google for local businesses in your area and email them and call them, making that same offer. And again, you're pretty much guaranteed to find at least 2-3 people who need a website. So once you build out like 2 to 4 freelance projects, that brings us to step 3. And what you're going to do here is you're going to create a portfolio section in your company website. And a lot of these digital agency web templates will come with one already built out for you. So you just need to change the actual projects in there, change the images, change the text, and again, have about 2 to 4 client projects in there, and you want to refer to them as past customers. And now when someone digs deeper into this agency experience that you have on your resume, you can actually back it up with real proof. You can talk about the website that you built for the company. You can talk about the client projects that you had to work on. It's actually a real legitimate experience. And just like that, you now have 1 year of legit experience on your resume that you can actually back up in interviews. And that's going to be more than enough to land you interviews for your first internship / junior role. So that's it for the experience section. Now let's move on to the projects section. So what you need to realize is companies do not want to hire junior developers. They're a gamble. They might or might not work out. They cost a lot of money because besides their salaries, senior developers need to take time away from their work in order to actually mentor these juniors. Companies just have no incentive to hire juniors. So the purpose of your project section is to provide real evidence of your skills to these companies, to show that you mean business, that you actually know your stuff, and that you can deliver work right away when you join the company without being a hindrance. And the harder the problems you solve in your projects, the more chance you have of being hired. So this means that you don't want to have the same easy, simple, and basic projects in this section that everyone else has, like a to-do app, a calculator app, or a weather app. Instead, what you need to do in order to absolutely stand out from the crowd is build 1 to 2 insane applications for your resume that use at least 2 of the technologies listed below. So we have Chrome extension, 3JS plus GSAP, Web3, AI integration with ChatGPT, Claude, whatever, and PWA. And just to get your cogs turning, here are some examples of projects that you could build using these technologies that would make you stand out from the crowd. So first example is a Web3 finance tracking software, an AI personal training software with Android and iOS apps, an AI language translator with a Chrome extension. Now, a quick pro tip I want to give you is in order to get inspiration for good quality portfolio projects, just like these. I highly recommend 1, looking at winning hackathon projects from top universities like Harvard or MIT. And these are going to give you some more complex, really technical project ideas. Or if you want something more simple but just as effective, I recommend taking a look at the different side projects and startups that people are building on producthunt.com. Now, if you genuinely take action on this and pull this off, you're going to become a massively sought after developer. Now, moving on to the education section. How you handle the education section is going to vary a lot depending on your situation. If you're someone who does have a computer science or related degree, what you're going to do is you're going to move the education section to the very top of your resume, just below the header. And in that section, you're going to include your degree and any additional training that you may have done. For example, boot camps, courses, etc. And for your degree, you want to make sure you include all of your relevant classwork and achievements. So let's say you were the president of the computer science club or the teaching assistant to 20 plus students. And if you are currently studying or your degree was taken a very long time ago, so like 10 years ago or something, do not include the graduation date of your degree because it's not going to serve you at all. If you're currently studying, companies may be hesitant to bring you on because you are a student. If it was 10 years ago, they may think your skills are outdated. So the best thing you can do is just not include it on your resume and let the question come up in interviews. Now, with all of these changes implemented, your education section should look something like this. And I'll just make myself a little bit smaller so that you can see it. Now, if you're someone who doesn't have a computer science or related degree like myself, what you're going to do is keep the education section right below the project section. And what you're going to do is include the Harvard CS50 as your core education alongside any additional training that you may have completed, i.e. boot camps, courses, etc. So if you aren't aware of what the Harvard CS50 is, Harvard University basically has their introduction to computer science course from their actual college degree available online and completely for free. So what you can do is you can go and take this class and actually include it on your resume with a certificate and everything. And this is going to boost your resume's rankings because now it has Harvard University on it. And with all of these changes implemented, your education section should look something like this. Now, moving on to the final section, the skills section. So what you need to realize is at companies where recruiters are not very technical, resume filtering is literally just done by throwing away resumes that don't include certain keywords. So you could have the best experience in the world, but just because your resume didn't include certain keywords that the recruiter is looking for, it'll get discarded and thrown in the trash. So the goal here is just to prevent something like that from happening by stuffing every possible relevant keyword that we can into your resume. So you're going to have this section where you list all of these skills and technologies that you have worked with in the past, even if you are not that comfortable with them. And honestly, I'd even go as far as to include some that you know you don't know, but could learn pretty quickly if you had to. So now that you've got a standout resume, it's time for you to build a standout portfolio website. If you don't know what a portfolio website is, it's basically just a personal website for you to display your projects and skills to recruiters. And this right here is an example of a portfolio website template that I give to all of my students. Now, here's how you can build out a portfolio website that is absolutely going to kill the competition. Step 1 is Google Awards Portfolio. So go to Google, search for Awards Portfolio, and click on the first link. This will take you to a website where you will see some of the most beautiful portfolio websites you will have ever seen. So for example, if I go ahead and make this search right now, you can see if we have a scroll through, you can see just scrolling through how beautiful some of these portfolios are. Now, step 2 is you're going to have a scroll through and choose your 3 favorite portfolios. And what you're going to do is combine them together and build something insane using the following technologies: Vue.js, GSAP, Frame Emotion, and Typed.js. And that's going to allow you to build a portfolio website that absolutely clears the competition. Now, step 3 is get a free award-winning portfolio. So what I mean by this is if you look hard enough, you'll find that some of the portfolios on this website, on this list, will actually give you access to all of the source code. So in that case, you don't even need to build a portfolio from scratch. All you need to do is just copy the code, download it, and then change the images and the text, and you now have yourself an award-winning portfolio with little to no effort. And you may think this is unjust or not right or not moral, but in this tech game, you got to use every single advantage you can get. All right, now moving on to LinkedIn. So what you need to realize is resumes and LinkedIn profiles are like yin and yang. You directly apply with your resume, but opportunities come and find you with your LinkedIn profile. And you can see this visualized here on this little diagram. So recruiters reach out to you on your LinkedIn profile, and then you obviously use your resume to apply to positions. Now, again, if you're watching this video, you're probably a tech beginner. And although recruiters like to contact people with a lot more experience than you have currently, starting now and building up your profile is still absolutely crucial because you never know who's going to want you to work for them. So let's walk through how you can set up the best possible LinkedIn profile, starting with the basic information. So the first massively important aspect of your LinkedIn profile is going to be your basic information. This is the first thing that anyone who clicks on your profile is going to see. So you want to make sure you give off a good first impression. The key must-haves for any LinkedIn profile is going to be a professional headshot, a professional headline, 500 plus connections, and then a professional banner. So for the professional headshot, if it wasn't obvious enough, it's a really bad look if you don't have a profile picture. Honestly, even a mediocre picture is better than having no picture at all. Now, with that being said, you obviously still want to make sure that your profile looks as professional as possible. And you don't need to go overboard here. Just make sure your profile picture is you looking professional in some sort of formal clothing. And please make sure that this photo is not AI. I see a lot of people using these AI profile pictures on LinkedIn, and I promise you they are doing you more harm than good. I promise you, just keep it simple. Just get a nice professional photo of yourself, and that's all you need. Now, the professional headline. So it's extremely important that you have a headline that paints you as an experienced professional in your field of tech. Those are the candidates that employers are looking for on LinkedIn. So this means that your headline shouldn't be something like aspiring front-end developer looking for opportunities. This immediately puts off recruiters because now they know off the bat that you have no professional experience at all. So why in the world should they even hire you? You see, to give yourself the best possible chances of getting hired, set your headline to front-end developer. Don't set it to aspiring front-end developer. Don't set it to junior front-end developer. Just set it to front-end developer. Now, your professional banner. So this one is probably the most difficult to mess up, and there's a ton of different ways that you can approach your LinkedIn banner. But honestly, my personal recommendation is just to find a nice photo of the city/town that you live in and just set that as your banner. So that if any recruiters or employers who are based near you happen to stumble onto your profile, they'll immediately know that, hey, you live local and potentially reach out. Now, finally, 500 plus connections. So this one is definitely not as important as the rest. And being under 500 connections is not necessarily bad, but having that 500 plus connections on your profile just makes you look so much more professional. And it's really not hard to get to 500 connections. Just connect with like 50 random developers a day until you hit that 500 mark. And it honestly shouldn't take you more than 2 to 3 weeks to hit it. Now, next is a professional about section. So having a dialed in about section is pretty straightforward. Just start with a brief description of yourself and what you do. Highlight all the technical skills you know or are proficient in, and finish by just including any relevant links. Some people choose to write really long descriptions, but in my opinion, it's best to just keep this section minimalist and straightforward, just to make it easy for the recruiter to get all the information that they need from your profile as quickly as possible, just by having a skim through it. Now, next is the experience and projects section. So this is pretty simple. All you have to do is just take your experiences and best projects from your portfolio and include them on your LinkedIn profile. You can pretty much just copy the experience and projects straight from your resume onto your LinkedIn. And as obvious as that might seem, you'll be surprised how many LinkedIn profiles I see from beginners on a day-to-day basis that don't include this absolutely critical information. Remember, we want to make it as easy as possible for any recruiter or employer that comes on our profile to get a good gauge of our skills and level of expertise as possible. And again, in order to do this, all you have to do is just copy your experiences and projects straight from your resume onto your LinkedIn. Extremely simple. You don't have to do anything fancy. Just copy all the bullet points, the descriptions, etc. straight from your resume, and that's pretty much it. Now, next is the skills section. So when recruiters look for candidates for a specific job role, they will literally filter out profiles based on the skills you have listed out on your LinkedIn profile. So for this reason, it's very, very, very important to make sure you go through and put down all of the technical skills and non-technical skills, and I mean all, that you could possibly include on your LinkedIn profile. And this will make sure that you don't get ruled out for any roles that you could potentially be a candidate for. Now, as a quick bonus, you can also get endorsements on these skills from your friends and fellow developers to boost your credibility. So as you can see, 9 endorsements here, 9 endorsements here, just boosts your credibility. Now that's pretty much all there is to building a solid LinkedIn profile, but just a quick bonus I want to include is actually setting up a custom LinkedIn URL. So by default, your LinkedIn profile is going to have a URL with your first name, last name, and then a bunch of random weird characters. But if you go to your settings, you'll see that you actually have the ability to set your own custom URL. So what I would do is go in there and change it to something very simple. Ideally, your first name and last name, as you can see here. And this is going to add a small professional touch to your LinkedIn profile. And it's something that you almost don't notice, but it's one of those small 1% tweaks that add up over time and make you look more professional as a candidate. But like I said, that is pretty much it for LinkedIn. And now we're going to move on to the last piece of our application material, which is going to be our GitHub profile. So GitHub profiles are very similar to LinkedIn profiles in the sense that they both bring in passive job opportunities. So again, starting now and building up a solid GitHub profile is extremely important. So let's dive into the details and walk through how we can set up the best possible GitHub profile, starting with the basic information. So this is the first part of your GitHub profile that any recruiter will see. And the goal of this first section is just to give a nice professional description of yourself and what kind of developer you are. So the same typical advice you'll see for any other platform also applies to GitHub. You want to make sure you have a nice professional profile picture, and you don't need to go overboard, and just make sure that you're wearing something nice, something semi-formal, and make sure that you're not using AI photos. Now, what you also want to do is include links to other methods of contact. So you want to include links to your portfolio website and your LinkedIn profile to make it as easy as possible for any recruiter to get in contact with you as possible. Now, there is one piece of your profile that is unique exclusively to GitHub, and that is going to be your profile README. And this allows you to go overboard, unlike other platforms, and really make your profile pop, which helps you stand out from the boring GitHub profiles that the rest of your competition has. But the question is, how do we create these really visually appealing profile READMEs? Well, typically there would be a lot of work and styling that you had to do in order to achieve this look. But nowadays, there's actually online README profile generators that allow you to create these insane looking README profiles in under 30 seconds. Just search for GitHub README generator on Google and you'll find a ton of these websites that literally do all of the dirty work of creating these beautiful READMEs for you. Now, regardless of which of these profile generators that you choose to use, it's very, very important that you make sure your README profile answers these 3 questions. Who are you? What kind of developer are you? And what specific tech do you use? Now, the next really significant part of your GitHub profile is going to be your pinned project. So recruiters will search through your pinned project to answer these 3 questions. Do your projects use the tech that's in the job specification that they've been provided? How often are you using them? And how long have you been using them? So for that reason, you want to make sure to pin 4 to 5 of your best projects that are relevant to the jobs that you are applying for. And you want to make sure to include a simple README on each of your projects like so. That includes photos of your project, goes over the different technologies used in that project, and also includes instructions on how the recruiter can set up the project on their own device, just in case they are technical. This is going to save the recruiter a ton of time having to sift through and look through the code on their own. It gives them a better idea of who we are as a developer in a shorter amount of time, and hence increases their chance of having the best picture of us and increases our chances of getting hired. Now, the last part of setting up a good GitHub profile is going to be your contribution graph. So this part of your GitHub is definitely not as important as everything else that we have covered up until now. But with that being said, some recruiters will use your contribution graph as an indicator of your level of experience, especially if you don't have a long professional track record. So in other words, if you're a developer who's looking to land that first job, making sure that your GitHub contribution graph is covered in green is going to serve you well. Now, to achieve this, you want to make sure that you're making commits and pushing to GitHub very, very often at every small checkpoint and milestone that you can, rather than just making one large commit at the end of a project. But honestly, if you want to fast track this process of filling up your GitHub contribution graph, there's literally a ton of websites that will let you hack your contribution graph and customize it however you want. Now, do with this information what you will, but honestly, if I was a developer looking to land that first job, I'd be using every single advantage I could get my hands on. All right, now it's time for the final part of the free training, final subsection, which is navigating the current job market. market. So now that your application material is all set, it's time to learn about the current job market and how to leverage it to your advantage so you can land the job that you've wanted all along. After hundreds of hours of research, I've come up with the best possible roadmap for anyone to break into tech and get to 6 figures in under a year. And here's how it goes. Step 1 is learn. So learn all the necessary technical skills needed to be valuable to a company. Step 2 is internship. So go for an internship first and stay there for 2 to 4 weeks. Step 3 is a junior role. So after you've stayed at the internship for 2 to 4 weeks, you're going to go for a junior role, which will pay on average 60 to 90K per year. And after you've been in the junior role for 6 to 12 months, then that's when you're going to go for a mid-level role. And those pay on average 100 to 120K per year. And at that point, you can really do whatever you want. If you want to study data structures and algorithms on the side and land a job in top tech, you can go ahead and do that. If you just want to chill, work 3 to 4 hours a day while earning 6 figures, you could also just do that in this mid-level role. But in essence, that is the entire roadmap. Now, let's break down the step-by-step thought process behind this roadmap and why it is so effective. And in order to do that, you need to understand that this is what the current job market looks like right now. Every absolute beginner wants a developer job, but there's very, very few jobs catering to absolute beginners. And when I say beginners, I mean someone who just built a to-do app, maybe did a bit of free code camp and is going out and thinks they have a shot at a job. Now, if we look at junior roles, the situation here is a little bit better than being a complete beginner. So when I say junior, I refer to people who have learned all the technical skills, who could genuinely bring value to a company, and still the situation is not the best. There's still far more junior developers applying for roles than there are junior developer roles in the market. But if we take a look at the internships, you can see that they're 1-to-1. So it's approximately a 50-50 split of interns applying to positions compared to the positions actually available. And for that reason, starting off by going for an internship role rather than a junior role is extremely important. Internships are going to be much easier to land because most of the demand is on the junior role. Plus, there's more internship opportunities available in the market, as we can see here. There's also things you learn in an internship and by working in the real world that no program, course, or degree can ever teach you. So the game plan is this: get internship experience first. And once you have it, you'll be able to go back to the job market and land 60 to 90K junior roles, even though the odds aren't in your favor, because you will absolutely outclass everyone else. Because by this point, you already have real world work experience and will be a really advanced junior by this time, whilst everyone else was still horsing around, building to-do apps and tic-tac-toe games and complaining about the bad job market. So now you might be thinking, okay, this makes sense. You can probably see the merit behind my point, but you're probably wondering, how the hell do I even land that first internship in the first place? Well, here's the exact application strategy that I make all of my students use in order to land internships with ease. So step 1 is going to be building a hit list. So what you want to do is find 20 local digital agencies and software companies nearest to you using Google search, just like here, Google Maps, or LinkedIn. Now, the reason why we choose digital agencies in particular is the point of this internship is we want you to learn as much as possible in a short period of time. And we also want to look for companies that have the highest possibility of hiring juniors and interns. And digital agencies are the best kind of companies for that. I landed my first job at a digital agency. Pretty much all of my students landed their first job at a digital agency. And I could sit here and explain to you for hours why digital agencies are the most likely company to hire juniors and why they're the best companies to work at. But just take my word for it. You want to build a list of 20 plus local digital agencies near you. Now, once you've built your list of 20 digital agencies, what you then want to do is research each company. So what you're going to do is research each company using their LinkedIn, website, etc. And you're going to find out the names and the roles of the people who are most likely to make the hiring decisions. For example, CEOs, CTOs, senior engineers, hiring managers, etc. And you want to tell each company that you go into that you are researching local tech companies in your area and that their company caught your eye and that you'd absolutely love to work as an intern for them. Now, once you do this, once you've gone into each company, you've given them your resume, you've introduced yourself, what you then want to do is you want to immediately go home and immediately request all of the decision makers of the company you went into on LinkedIn. And you want to send them a quick Loom Video. So if you don't know what Loom is a video recording software that basically lets you share your screen while having your camera open and record a video. Loom's actually what I'm using to record this video right now. So when you record, it will look similar to this. And essentially in the Loom video, what you want to do is make sure to introduce yourself and what you do. You want to compliment the company, explain what value you can bring to them, and then show them how motivated you are to work for them. So just a quick example, let's say something like, hey, my name is Ayman. I'm a front-end developer with X years of experience building web applications for several different clients. I was researching local tech companies in my area and came across you guys and what you do. And I really love this project that you did with X, Y, and Z clients. I noticed that you guys use this particular tech stack in this particular project. So if you have any projects like this in the future, I'm actually very, very skilled in these technologies. So I think I could be of use. I'd absolutely love to come into the office and learn more about your company and what you guys do and how it can be of assistance and potentially work as an intern for you guys. So that was off the top of my head. Obviously, it's going to be a little more polished than that, but that should help you understand how the general flow should look. Now, step 5 is also applying online. So while you're in the process of doing this, on the side, what you want to do is also spam easy and quick applies on LinkedIn and Indeed, etc. And you want to be doing 30 of these per day. And as a quick bonus, what you can do to increase your chances of receiving an interview is include a Loom video for each company that you apply to in the cover letter. Absolutely no one is doing this. And if you follow this entire strategy, there is absolutely no chance that you don't land an internship. And shortly after that, the 60 to 90K junior role that you wanted all along. So now that you understand how this process works, I have an offer for you. If you are a career professional looking to transition into tech, if you are an aspiring tech beginner, or if you are an experienced self-taught developer, bootcamp graduate, or CS grad who is struggling to break into the industry, and you want to land a developer job paying 60 to 100K per year without having any prior experience, without needing to have a college degree, and without wasting years of your life trying to figure this out by yourself, I will personally help you master the 6-figure coder framework so that you can replicate this exact process and see similar results in a fraction of the time it would take you to do it on your own. In fact, I'm so confident that I could deliver these results that if you don't land a 60 to 100K front-end developer job in the next 12 months of working with me, you don't pay. So if you want to see similar results to my students and want the same level of training and mentorship, check out the first link in the description and apply to join my coding bootcamp. And if it's a good fit, we can talk about how to work together. And worst case scenario, if it isn't a good fit, I'll point you in the right direction. And here's some quick proof just to prove all of the results that I've gotten for myself and my students. So I hope you enjoyed. Click the first link in the description to apply for my one-on-one coding bootcamp. And I'll see you guys in the next video.